Good morning to all. Today we see the lecture number 14 is the classification of crop. So there are classified in 10 types like classification based on a climate, classification based on a growing season, then a classification based on agronomical uses, classification based on life of crops or duration of crops, then a classification based on cultural methods. Then sixth one is the classification based on a root system. Then classification based on economic importance. Then the next one is the classification based on a number of cotyledons. And then a classification based on a photosynthesis. And last one is the classification based on a length of photoperiod required for a floral initiation. So first one we see the classification based on a climate. So classification based on a climate. So in that first is the temperate zone crop. So temperate crop or temperate zone crop is the crop plants are a winter hardy and tolerant of very low temperature, can tolerate a chilling temperature. uh, this example like crops like wheat, oat, rice, the temperate crops. Then tropical crops, those crops which are grow in a frost does not occur during the growing season. Normal growth is affected by the temperatures below 10 degrees Celsius. And example like sugarcane, mango and pineapple. Then third one is the subtropical zone crop. Crops can tolerate some freezing temperature, that is a below 0 degree Celsius. It's a below freezing point of water. And those crops like citrus, dates, fig and pomegranate. Then classification based on a growing season. Classification of crops on the basis of seasons. uh, there are three seasons like kharif, rabi or summer season. So first one we see the kharif season. These crops which are planted in a summer month from April to June and harvested in autumn months is a winter from October to November. And the example of these season crops like maize, millets, sorghum, sunflower, groundnut, rice, cotton, mung bean and mash bean. Then second season is the Rabi season. Those crops which are planted in a winter month from October to November and harvested in a summer from April to May. An example of this season crops like wheat, barley, oat, lentil and chickpea and canola. Then last one is the Z crop, is a summer crop, means autumn crops. Those crops which are planted in August, September and harvested in December to January. An example of this crop is a toria. This Z season like Z rabi or spring crops, those crops which are planted in February to March and harvested in May to June. An example like a tobacco. Then next classification is the classification based on use or agronomic classification. This classification we are separately study in next video. Then next classification based on lifespan or duration of crops. So life cycle based classification. So first is the annual crop, means these crops they complete their life cycle in a 1 year or one season. So example of these crops like wheat, barley, maize. Biennial crops. Biennial crops means these crops are complete their life cycle in 2 years, 2 season. During the first year, these crops which grow vegetatively and reserve the food in their roots or other plant parts, and during the second year reserve food is utilized to produce the flower and fruits. and their example is the sugar beet, radish, carrot and turnip. This is the two seasons crop. Then perennial crops. Perennial crops means which crops grow for more than 2 years. They may produce a seed each year, but their lifespan is more than 2 years. These have regenerative power to sprout from their stubbles after the harvesting, and their example is the sugarcane and alfalfa. Then next, classification based on a cultural method or water. They are classified into two types: rain-fed or irrigated crops. So rain-fed crop is the crops which are grow only on a based on a rainwater, and their example is the jawar, bajra and mook. Then irrigated crops, which crops grow with the help of irrigation water, is called as the irrigated crops, and their example is the chili, sugarcane, banana and papaya. Then next, classification based on a root system. The root system classify by two types, like a taproot system or adventitious root system. So taproot system is the in that main root goes to the deep into the soil. Okay, in taproot system main root goes to the deep into the soil, and their example is tur, grape and cotton. And second one is the adventitious or fibrous root. The crops whose roots are fibrous, shallow and spreading into the soil, and their example is the cereal crops, wheat, rice. We see the example of a taproot system or fibrous root system. Adventitious roots, they are spread. Then next one is the classification based on economical importance. Classification based on economic importance, like a cash crop or food crop. Cash crop means those crops are grown for earning money, and their example is the sugarcane and cotton. Then second one is the food crop. These crops are grown for the raising of food grain for the population and fodder for cattle, and their example is the jawar, wheat and rice. Then classification based on a number of cotyledons. They are classified into two types, like monocots or dicots. So monocots are monocotyledons having one cotyledon in seed, and their example is the or cereals or millets. Or second one is the dicots or dicotyledons, which having two cotyledons in the seeds, and their example is the all legumes or pulses. Then next one is the classification based on photosynthesis. So classification based on a mode of photosynthesis. First one is the C3 plants. In C3 plants fix the CO2 and form as a 3 carbon molecule or a 3 phosphoglyceric acid. This pathway was discovered by the Kelvin and his co-workers. So these plants do exhibit the photorespiration. Plants with this pathway of carbon assimilation are called as the C3 pathway plants, and their example is the wheat, oat, rye, soybean and cotton. These crops are C3 plants. Such plants cannot utilize the CO2, light, temperature and water efficiently, and therefore they called as the inefficient plants. Then second one is the C4 plants. In C4 plants, first product of photosynthesis is the 4 carbon molecules called as oxaloacetate. Plant fix the CO2 as a H and slack pathway, and these do not exhibit the photorespiration. Such a plant can utilize the CO2, light, temperature, water efficiently, and therefore is called as efficient plant, and their example is the sugarcane, maize and sorghum is the C4 plants. Then CAM plants. CAM plants means crassulaceous acid metabolism. CAM plants fix the CO2 into 4 carbons acid called as a malate, as do the C4 plants. Fixation of CO2 occurs at the night when the stomata are open, and CAM plants grow in the deserts and have a succulent fleshy leaves and stem with the low transpiration and water requirement, and their example is the pineapple or prickly pear. Then last one is the classification based on a length of photoperiod or required for initiation. So what is a photoperiodism? Photoperiodism is the plant's response of plant to seasonal change in a day length. Plants grow vegetatively, produce the leaves and branches, then change from the vegetative to reproductive stage by producing the flowers and fruits. This change is brought by about changes in day and length, that is the number of hours of light. So photoperiodism, they are classified in two types, like short day plants or long day plant or day nutrient. There are three types. First one is the short day plant. These plants change from the vegetative to reproductive stage and produce the flowers and fruits when the day become a shorter. If they kept in a long day environment, their vegetative growth will continue and they will not flower. Their day length requirement is less than 12 hours. Example like soybean, rice, tobacco is the short day plant. Next one is the long day plant. Their day length requirement is more than 12 hours. Example is the wheat, barley, oat, gram. Then day neutral plants. Plants whose initiation of flowering is not affected by the length of the day is called as the day neutral plant, and their example is the tomato and cucumber. Thank you.